Hello, I'm going to be talking about critical chain project management, specifically how to manage and deliver large, complex projects. If you work in project management, you don't need me to tell you it can be challenging. 90% of projects fail to meet all three: cost, scope, and time. And 40% of projects overrun, and 30% finish over budget, and only 50% deliver the full scope. The question is, are the challenges any different? In many businesses, you see exactly the same situation. So if you work in a project environment, this will be very, very familiar. Management spends an absolute fortune on software. They implement Agile and various other methodologies, but performance remains exactly the same as it was 20, 30, even 50 years ago. There's basically been no tangible difference. Managing projects hasn't gotten any easier, and we often see the same complaints arise. Schedules are tight, there are changes to scope, you don't have the required skills available, the budget is cut, and so on. And it's the same across every industry: engineering, IT, construction, financial services. These challenges are experienced by anyone that works with projects. There are a few things that could be the constraint in a project. The constraint could be the longest chain of dependent events in the project. It could also be the integration point where many things come together. Or it could be management or expert attention. All three of these have been claimed at one point. In a single project environment, you could say the constraint is the longest chain of dependent events. That's why we call it critical chain. If you complete this faster, the whole project will come in on time. You could also claim the constraint is the integration point. This tends to be the case on very large projects. This is the point where you bring everything together in the project. You might have 3 or 4 aspects you need to bring together. However, where these different aspects have been worked on in isolation, getting them to work in combination can very often be the cause of significant delays in the project. In other environments, the constraint manifests in your expert resource management attention. If there are only a few experts and you launch too many projects, there's too much work. All of this work requires their expertise, and effectively we end up wasting their capacity. So to some extent you have to be aware that there are a few things that, if you don't manage them well, can contribute to the delay of the project. The problem calling the constraint is that there can be more than one of them, and it can also happen at different times in the project. In this slide, I'm going to talk about the cycle projects undergo when something has negatively impacted the schedule, the cost, or quality, or all three. If costs increase or quality decreases, you can feel as though you're losing control of the project. This leads you to hold people accountable. You break the project into smaller tasks and assign due dates to ensure more visibility over the project. Protect against the uncertainty, and effectively what we do is we bake in safety into the tasks. You end up firefighting, you're multitasking, you're switching between priorities. This all impacts the schedule, cost and quality, so you feel forced to start even when you aren't ready. Add the uncertainty to everything and you're doomed. Basically, your profit, throughput and cash flow all be negatively impacted. So let's take a look at one of these things: reducing multitasking. Our perception of switching and multitasking is that it comes at zero cost on the duration of tasks. So if task A takes 10 days, and task B takes 10 days, and task C takes 10 days, it shouldn't matter whether you complete each task without switching or whether you jump from task to task. It should take 30 days to finish everything. But that is not the case. There is actually a big cost to switching. There's a cost in time, but also a cost in rework. Time should sort of make sense. There is setup times, for example, that you'd have to factor in. If you've ever put something down and come back to it later, then that tends to increase the rework as well, and it will likely impact the quality too. So I would argue that the cost of multitasking is not only measurable in time, but in quality and rework as well. So after we apply critical chain to these environments, then what does critical chain do? Well, it injects 5 things into the environment to deliver significant desired effects. The first is what we call constraint obsession. This answers the question of where to direct management's limited attention. Then, through reducing interruptions, we are able to reduce the multitasking and allow resources to focus and finish. This is further supported by ensuring there is a low work in progress environment and good control over the release of tasks. This will reduce the choice of tasks and help support the reduction in switching. If you're also making sure that the team is only working on tasks that can be finished through ensuring they have a full kit and they are not working in tasks that don't, then focus is on the right place. Either getting the full kit ready for tasks that should have started but haven't, or on finishing projects already started. The final element is the monitoring mechanism that protects the whole project rather than individual tasks. Reviewing the health rate of buffer penetration should arm management with the answer to where they should be directing their focus to ensure the project is delivered on time. The cause and effect which supports this is that through injecting these elements into the process, you feel more and more in control of the schedule. Then you're better able to support people in completing their tasks where necessary and provide them with everything that they need. This in turn means you can protect against uncertainty by embedding safety in a strategic place to protect a combination of tasks. In addition, when you inject these elements, you only start where you can finish. And you finish where you start. You have less and less iterations and rework, which enables key resources, managers, experts, and shared resources to be more available to progress the project faster. You have less and less iterations and rework, and this means key resources can focus on the important areas for success. So implementing these elements will give you low work in progress, focus and finish behaviours, and clear priorities that, despite uncertainty, deliver a significant reduction in time and cost, while simultaneously delivering improvements in quality without making changes to scope. So if we look at the TO6 solution for critical chain project management, there's effectively 3 elements to it. What we do is we factor risk into project timings, but rather than allow for risk on a task level, we want to aggregate that risk together. This is our buffer. The purpose of a buffer is to protect from variability. It also reduces the variability as well. Variability on an individual level is much less when you aggregate it together. From a work in progress perspective, release gate aims to lower the amount of work in progress at any one time. So we control the release of those tasks. Removing the local optima is all about behaviours and measures. People are going to behave in a way they are measured. So you should measure at the aggregation point. Try to take the variability out of every single task. We encourage relay runner behaviour. That's where the entire team is functioning as one unit, protecting the buffer. For example, Italy won the 4x100 men's relay at the Tokyo Olympics. Not because they had the fastest runners, but because they handed over the baton the quickest. They practiced and practiced to the point that they were the fastest at handing that baton over. Other countries individually had faster runners, but the Italians worked together as a team. The game was all in the handovers. One individual running the fastest leg isn't the goal of the relay. Exactly the same in a project perspective. So many projects fail because of the delays that happen during the handovers when the baton effectively is dropped, to use this analogy. Critical chain is a very successful solution that's been implemented worldwide. However, there are 2 major challenges. One is that you need to achieve buy-in for having a buffer protecting the project. You need to get senior management to agree that you have a large enough buffer in place. That can be a challenge. Another challenge is getting buy-in that the due date is realistic in any way, shape or form. This is especially true for large programs where there are hundreds of people involved, suppliers, subcontractors, etc. Ironically, the other challenge is often that management doesn't actually care about the due date. They're not willing or prepared to do whatever it takes to hit the due date. It can be difficult to implement with established systems in place, but what's even more difficult is implementing with a strong local optimum measure. When you're measured on things that drive the wrong behaviours, that makes it more difficult. There are an awful lot of measures in many environments that focus on utilisation of individuals. Once it's implemented, it's very hard to stop the old rules returning. If you haven't fully gotten rid of the old policies and measures, then the behaviours don't change, and the old rules return. It's very difficult in a large project environment to change all the policies and measures you need to get the behaviours in place. So there's an assumption that you will lose more time with a delay at the handover stage than you will in delays working on the task. There are often large delays in projects going backwards and forwards with iterations and rework. This happens at the point where one task finishes and the next one is starting. You need to eliminate these delays. The way you do that is through making sure that you've properly defined what done looks like. What does the task look like when it's finished? What is the full kit for task 2? And is that ready? So the two things you need are you only want to start where you can finish, and you want to finish what you start. This is the key. At an execution level, you should be looking to run the task like a factory. That means chunking the tasks down. You want to break the task down into smaller tasks, turn them into something you can start and finish, and then get on to the next one. Start the task, finish the task, and hand it on. Whip boards and Kanban boards are brilliant for this. They give you visibility at that low level of execution. Although this is not how you manage a project, you manage it at a much higher level. The difference between Agile and a Kanban board is that this way the scope is fixed and you're going to chunk tasks down and get them completed as fast as possible while reporting the remaining duration. This is all protected by a buffer. This is the major difference between Agile because it assumes that the time is fixed. Agile assumes that the time is fixed, whereas we fix the scope in critical chain environment. So the major breakthrough. You plan a project on different levels. You want to manage a project at a very high level. If you can imagine a 3-tier planning process, then level 1 will be some very chunky tasks. You can see on that slide that big tasks, which have a buffer at the end of them. Then you're taking one of these big tasks and breaking them down into much smaller tasks to move it through quickly. Then the next level will be the critical chain plan, where you've linked the large task to the Kanban board. That's where you execute at the lowest level and you're implementing buffer management at the highest level. The third level is looking at how well you're managing your buffers. So, what are the results you get from this methodology? Implementing critical chain will see a 20 to 50% reduction in lead time. On-time delivery will hit 95% plus, and you'll see a significant cost reduction. If you complete something faster, costs will go down because work isn't hanging around. If you have a realistic plan and are managing your buffers well, you will see a higher delivery performance because you'll know where to focus, when to take recovery actions, and how many recovery actions to take. If you're winning, people will be happy. If you're losing, they won't be. Sometimes when you go into a project environment, employees feel as though they come to work and don't stand a chance. Critical chain boosts employee satisfaction. So in summary, we're trying to reduce the variability of every task so that we can precisely estimate how much effort is required from a person. Often the assumption is that a person can be 100% effective all the time, switching between lots of tasks. That doesn't make sense because this isn't how people work. You can't think that getting your people to work all the time is your best chance of delivering the project as quickly as possible to the correct scope and cost. Critical chain, when implemented properly, can deliver fantastic results, including employee satisfaction. It drives the right behaviours and execution, and at an executive